thanking all the organisers for organising this bootcamp. I know a lot of effort is involved in setting these up, so thank you very much for that. My topic today is low-code automated UI testing for model-driven apps. The agenda for today's session is, first of all, we'll start off with an introduction into some of the tools and concepts that we'll be using. Bear with me one moment. Actually, I'm just going to put my camera on because I think that might be a little bit more personal. Should be able to see me now. I'm hoping that'll be a little bit better. So yes, we'll be having an introduction. I'll then go over installation and configuration for this solution, which will have a live demo. We'll then move on to writing tests, which also includes a demo, some CI/CD concepts, and then we've got a section at the end for Q&A. The first thing to talk about is Easy Repro. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, the purpose of this library is to provide Dynamics customers the ability to facilitate automated UI testing for their projects. These APIs provide an easy-to-use set of commands that make setting up UI testing quick and easy. This covers a lot of functionality that a user will use in their day-to-day jobs for model-driven apps and Dynamics 365 customer engagement. Topic to cover, which I believe Ankit covered very well in his previous presentation, is behavior-driven development, which is an agile software development practice that encourages collaboration between everyone involved in developing software, such as testers, developers, business users, such as product owners and business analysts. BDD aims to create a shared understanding of how an application should behave by discovering new features based on concrete examples. Using the Gherkin syntax of i.e. given, when, then. Cool. The other tool to talk about is SpecFlow. I think this was also given a brief introduction earlier. This is the #1 .NET open source framework for behavior-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, and specification by example. To discover business requirements and build up a shared understanding across your team and stakeholders. We use this, as was shown in the previous presentation. You can kind of use this to generate automated tests whilst writing them in feature files using given, when, then. So it makes it a lot easier and more accessible. So onto our solution, Power App SpecFlow bindings. This is used for model-driven apps test automation. The reason we did this is we thought a low-code platform demands a low-code test solution. We also found that Easy Repro, we really like Easy Repro because it allows you to do a lot and work with Dynamics 365 customer engagement. However, this it has quite a high technical barrier for entry in some ways, and it relies on developers that can engineer an effective test assembly. It also doesn't provide any functionality outside of abstracting WebDriver interactions. And just from our own experience, we found that not many projects might not have developers comfortable with both Power Apps and its APIs and UI test automation. So, an example test. As you can see on the screenshot on the screen, we've got an example here of what a test would look like in our solution. You can see the scenario: the user can create a new account, and you've got your given, when, then steps of, given I am logged into the sales team member app as an admin, when I open the account sub-area of the customers group, then I can see the new command. This will basically verify that a user can create a new account in Dynamics 365. That's an example of how these tests can be written using our solution. Cool. So a little bit more on why we did this and what the benefits are. So we think this will allow you to have more effective low-code test automation. It will allow you to spend more time actually defining your tests rather than implementing them. One thing to note also is we found with UI tests, they tend to take a little bit longer than your other testing types, for example, such as integration testing or unit testing. So one of the things we can do with this is run tests in parallel. You can easily configure different identities on our solution, such as users. So we run in users who will perform the test on behalf of. It's easily extensible when code is required. So yeah, you can quite often and quite easily extend this if we can't find a step definition, which you would need for your specific use cases. And also we've added some functionality for easily set up complicated preconditions, which also supports randomly generated data. Cool. Just before I move on to the demo, does anyone have any questions so far? I'm going to presume no, unless I've missed something. Oh, sorry, I'm going to move on to the installation section now. So to do this, you need to install the Capgemini.power SpecFlow bindings NuGet package into your SpecFlow test project and update your SpecFlow configuration to load the bindings. We've got an example of what the SpecFlow configuration file here looks like. That's the one on the bottom, the screenshot image. When you install the Power SpecFlow bindings, it automatically adds a YAML file to your project, which allows you to configure your target environment, browser settings, and user identities. So manage test users. Test users can be added to an array of test users. We've got an example here of what it'd look like for a user configured in this solution. You've got the username and password here, which is environment variables, which you can set on your Windows machine and also on your pipelines. And then you've got the alias, a salesperson, which is how you reference to or refer to these users. These are the username and password, the environment variables, are read at runtime. All the browser options supported by Easy Repo are supported by Power SpecFlow bindings. These are read from the browser options property of the YAML file. As you can see here, it's browser type. We've chosen in this example to use Chrome. Headless is set to true, which is what you'd normally want to have headless set to true, because that means these run in the background. However, you might want to, when writing or debugging your tests, set this to false, because then it will actually open the web browser itself on your screen, and then you can follow the steps through and see what's happening and how the tests are performing. Width height is just the dimensions of the screen or the window that are opening, and start maximize is whether the screen is or the window is maximized for your test. Great. Now I'll move on to the first demo, installation and configuration. Just going to open my VM for using this. You should be able to see Visual Studio 2019 now. I am going to create a new project. I'm going to create a type class library .NET framework. I'm going to call this Bootcamp demo and click create. I'm going to get rid of this class because we don't need this. I'm going to manage the NuGet packages. The first NuGet package to install is the Capgemini Power Apps NuGet package. Bear with me, please, while this just downloads and installs, while it gathers the dependency first. There we go. And now this should start to run and install. Great, that was a success. Next, this works with different test runners, such as XUnit, NUnit, and MS Test. I am going to choose MS Test for this example, for these tests to be run on. So there's a couple of things to install for the SpecFlow components, which will be SpecFlow tool MS build generation, which allows you to build your feature files into executable tests. That is done. And then I'm also going to install the SpecFlow MS Test extension package. I'm going to update the MS Test framework. And install the MS Test adapter. Also, because I'm going to want to run these tests in Chrome, I'll need to install the Chrome WebDriver. There we go. And also, we found that we need to, for references, we need to migrate package to package references. Great. Now, as part of this, as mentioned before, we need to add the configuration file, the JSON file. So I'm going to do that now to load the bindings for Power Apps. And for what you need, you can find this on our GitHub repo. We've got it here. And save. Now, one of the final parts of this let me just check something. Sorry about this. Yeah, now I've got a pre-configured YAML file. So I'm just going to add this to the project. And then I'll walk you through the settings. As you can see here, we've got environment variables for the username and password, and we have an alias of demo user. I have set it to Chrome and headless to false. And I've got a URL for my Dynamics 365 instance. This would actually be an environment variable as well. Now, let's see if I've set this up correctly. Let me see if I can add a feature file and perform a simple login test. I'm going to create what's called a SpecFlow feature file. Call it login. Feature login, given. And as you can see, we've got IntelliSense, and we have our tests. We have some IntelliSense suggesting some steps. I am going to test that I've set this up correctly, test that I can log into the sales app. As the demo user. And I'm just going to open when I sub area under the area name. I'm going to pick this step. I'm going to look for the customers area, and I'm going to look for accounts. Then I can see the new command. So in theory, what this test should do is I'm just going to save. Important step to put in here is the scenario as well. What this should do is it should open the Dynamics. It's open the Chrome browser, log into the Dynamics 365 Sales tab, and check to see if we can see the new command for accounts. I'm just going to run a build. And we've had our test discovered. Login. Going to give this a run. Here we go. So it's opening. This is all automated. You can probably see on the screen I'm hands-free. It's logging in. It's loading the app selector. Let's hope I've spelled Sales Hub correctly. It's logged into the Sales Hub app. It should now be going to the accounts area of the customers. There we go. And it should now be performing its assertion of seeing if it can see the new command. And there we go. We've set this up and we have a green test. That is how you install and configure this solution. I just wanted to show that because we think it's quite simple to do. So we thought it'd be nice and easy to show you quick how easy this is to set up and get started with. We'll have some more demos, a demo on using it later. But for now, I'm going to move back over to the slides. So onto the section of writing and tests. So I just want to go over some spec flow concepts, such as features, scenarios, and bindings. Tests are written in what are known as feature files, as you saw in that demo just before. They are written as scenarios, which are then converted by spec flow into executable tests. What this solution Power Up spec flow bindings does is it provides a lot of bindings for model-driven apps. Just wanted to talk about the spec flow definition of a binding, because thought that would be useful. The Gherkin feature files are closer to free text than to code. They cannot be executed as they are. The automation that connects the specification to the application interface has to be developed first. The automation that connects the Gherkin specification to source code is called a binding. This is a feature file example. As you can see, you've got a feature called calculator with a brief description of what the feature does. And then you've got a scenario add two numbers, which is the feature example in this one is it's entering two numbers into the calculator, and then it's saying the result should be the sum of those two numbers. So as you can see, it's Gherkin syntax, easy to read by most, if not everyone, sort of thing. You don't need to be a developer to understand and read these or even write these tests. It can be done by other members of the team. Preconditions, actions, and assertion. The framework has predefined bindings that can set up preconditions, interact with the browser, and perform assertions. We currently have at least one binding for every method on the Easy Repro API. SpecFlow provides an extension for Visual Studio, which provides step suggestions and feature file language support. If you can see the screenshot on the screen, you can see how IntelliSense is auto-populating step suggestions of what you might want to do for your different parts of your tests. Creating data to set up preconditions. This is one of the more advanced features of our tool, which we think is quite useful. It can save you a huge amount of time because you can create these test data via via the web API. It resembles the deep insert syntax of this. We have a method here called given I've created, and it can use additional metadata is used also to alias records, generate random data, and create relationships. Also, it's not on the slides, but we've also developed a new step given someone has created, which can be used to, for example, you can create data as other users. So you might want to say you've got one user, let's call it underprivileged user, who's only able to update certain records, read and update certain records. But you might want to have another user who's overprivileged, higher privileged, who is able to actually create the record. You can then actually go and have the higher privileged record user create the record, and then have the underprivileged go and update it as part of the same test conditions. So this allows better testing of your security model of your Dynamics 365 customer engagement or model-driven apps. This is an example of the JSON data file on the left-hand side. It's called a new issue.json. And as you can see, it's got the alias, which is the issue. On the scenario on the right-hand side, it shows how you can kind of use the JSON data file. So, and I've created a new issue referencing the JSON file. And I've opened the issue, which is referencing the alias. And also, which will allow you to open the record. Setting lookups via aliasing. So one of the features we have also is we can create related records using previously created records alias. So on the left-hand side, we've got a contact, which alias is a sample contact, and some data about it, such as John Smith, his first name and the person's first name and last name. On the right-hand side, we've got the account. And as you can see, we've got this primary contact ID at alias.bind, a sample contact. So if you create the contact first, you can then create the account linking to the first created record by its alias, and it'll get its GUID and it'll populate it for you when you're creating this. We've also added something in so you can generate dynamic data. We've added faker.js. As you can see, we've got some parameterized values here, like first name and last name, which will generate a string that looks like a first name or last name. You've got finance.amount, which will generate a number or a figure. You've got internet.email, which will generate an email for email addresses. You've also got date.past90, which will generate a date within the past 90 days. You can also author your own bindings. As I think I mentioned, this is easily extendable. What you have to do is create your own SpecFlow binding class and inherit from Power App Step Definer. Inheriting from this class provides you easy access to the Selenium iWebDriver and the Easy Repo XRM app. For anything that is reusable, we would welcome contributions to the Power App SpecFlow bindings repository. Just want to go over some additional SpecFlow constructs. Other concepts in SpecFlow, e.g. hooks or step argument transformations, can also make use of the Power App Step Definer base class in order to easily access Easy Repro and the browser safely. Great, I'm going to move on to the demo of writing tests. Bear with me while I just move over to the VM again. First of all, I'm going to want to create an entity. So I'm going to add a new feature file. So this is a different scenarios. I'm going to call my feature file entity. I'm just going to give it a brief description. In order to automate data creation interaction, as a developer, I want to use pre-existing creation steps. So let's go on to our scenario. Let's do create a new account and check the name is persisted. So given what you'll see here, or should see here, is it's actually remembered our previously configured step. So given I'm logged in, so we don't have to rewrite that in, which I think is a really useful feature. When I open the sub area name under the area group, once again, I'm going to open the accounts underneath the customers area group. When I select the new command and I select summary tab. Now this next step, what we could do is we could choose to use a step just to enter one value into one field. But what I'm going to show you is we can also support tables, which I think is useful. Because you can, rather than having loads of when I enter this into this field and into this field, you can just have a table of what you're doing. So we've got this following in form, which will support a table, and I'll show you how this works. Is you first of all got to enter in your value, then field, type, and location. So for value, I'm going to call it Bootcamp demo. Field, we want name. Type, we want text. Location, we want field. You can have multiple rows on this, just so you're aware. So that's one of the benefits of using the table. Let's save the record. Then I can see a value of field location here is going to be field. The reason we put this is because it might be on the header as well, so you can put field or header field. This is of type. Oops. Name. And what's our expected value? Expected value is Bootcamp demo. Name text field. That's right. And I'm just going to add another step here, another assertion, so I can put in a debug point so we can actually see what happens and pause there. And I'm just going to say I can see the details tab. I'm going to save this. And if I've done this, I'm just going to add a quick debug code. Let's give it a build. We have discovered our new test. I'm going to run this in debug mode just so it'll pause. Here we go. As before, it's logging in. Should be going to the accounts area. Should click new. There we go. Saved. It should be running the assert to see if it's got the value now. And it's paused there to see if you can see the details tab. But as you can see, it's populated that field. We'll give this a continue. And this should be a green test also. There we go. Now I'm also going to move on to some more advanced features, such as the data creation. I'm going to create a new feature file. Call this data. I'm also going to add a folder here called data. And I've got some previously configured JSON data files, created JSON data files, which I'm just going to add into this folder. I'll walk you through them in a moment. I'll get the test set up and running first. I'm also waiting for it to log in. I can show you what's going on in the data folders. One thing important to note when you're using these JSON data files is you need to copy them to the output directory. Personally, I choose copy if newer, but you can also use copy always as its property. Oops, my screen is just frozen. Sorry about that. There we go. All right, so let's define our test. There's another useful feature here, which I'm just going to go over on spec flow bindings, is you can create something called a background. Oops, I am having, there we go. Which is called background. What it does is for your scenarios, this will be like the pre-steps for each of your scenarios that are run. So I'm going to populate this with given I'm logged into Sales App as the demo user, so I don't have to keep writing this for each and every scenario. So the first scenario, I'm going to go over one of the examples we talked about earlier, which is create a record with an alias, and then create another record referencing this. Alias. So given I have created, here we have the I have created step. We need the file name. So first we need the alias contact. And I have created the account with aliased contact. And I have opened, I'm going to want to open the account with an alias contact. So I'm just going to get its alias. And then just so we can debug it, I'm going to put an assertion. I can see the details tab. Let's give it a save. Let's give this a build. We have our new test discovered. I'm going to run this, or debug this, sorry. Cool, well that loads up. I'm going to talk about and show you the data. So the first one is an alias contact. We've got this contact with a sample contact, and we've got its logical name or its NC logical name, which is contact, and then we have the data. We have the data as part of this record. We then have an account with alias contact, and this is referencing that contact using that alias.bind key value pair. So in theory, what this test should be doing is creating that contact, creating that account, linking that contact in the primary contact ID, and then opening that account. Let's see if it works. Cool, it's reached the debug point. Let's create the account. And what we should see is if we go to primary contact, we have John Smith, the contact that was referenced. I'm just going to continue, and that should be another green test. Awesome. I'm going to do another scenario. Create a contact using random test data. Given I have created and I have opened just going to get the alias, the faked record. Once again, I'm going to put this, but I can see details tab just for a debug point. Okay. I'm going to build this. My new test has been discovered. Let's debug it. Whilst that's running, it's going to pop up in front of me, but I'll come back to it once it does. As you can see in here, we've got a contact reference as the faked record. The faked record. We've got a name and a random name and first name and last name populated. We've got a credit card limit of a finance amount. We're populating their email address with an email, their birthday as a date within the past 90 days. And we're also owning team, where you can see we've got a nested record here, a faked record with a name.job area for the name. Let's go back to the browser. Just then, it would have been creating the data in the background. We have the contact. Yep, cool. I put it pause there. That's good. We've got a random first name, last name, email address. And if we go to the details tab, we should see an email address. Where is it? We should see birthday first of all, credit limit, and I believe it's email. Raheem's email address would have been on here somewhere. There we are. Cool. So as you can see there, we have populated and created a record on Dynamics 365 customer engagement with randomized data. That ends this section on write and test and the demo. Just want to, yeah, so now I'm going to move back to the slides. Bear with me whilst I just figure out how to move this out of the way. So CI/CD. I want to talk about some test project considerations and some pipeline considerations. Test project considerations, first of all. Tests should be configured to run in headless mode with height and width set to reasonable values. Test framework should allow attachments, e.g. NUnit MS test. Tests should be written in a way that they can be safely run in parallel, randomly generate key fields, for example, such as email address if you've got duplicate detection on there for your contacts. You'll need to create your own spec flow hooks to attach screenshots on failure, as this is test framework dependent. And some pipeline considerations. Consider adding a dummy request, e.g. Power Platform Who Am I, to the pipeline to resume the instance before running the test. What this means is basically sometimes when you're running these on your pipeline, the first test can get the connection sometimes need warming up, and sometimes it times out. So although I've noticed this has seemed to improve recently, it's just sometimes the connection can take a little while to establish. So it's good to do a Who Am I just to warm up the connection. The pipeline should reset your environment and deploy your package before running tests. We found it's useful to have a clean environment to run your test data creation and then your automated UI tests on them. The test task should be configured to run tests in parallel to keep pipeline execution time down. You can run your tests in parallel from what I found at a class level or a feature file level. So different features can run in parallel at the same time, but you can't run individual tests individually in parallel in the same feature file. Now map your secret variables, e.g. user passwords, to environment variables. I'm actually a bit ahead of time, but I think that might be a good thing because I may have nearly brought us back close to the schedule. So now it's over to you for Q&A. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for that, David. So that's, again, a crash course using EasyRepro and with SpecFlow, which I think a lot will be music to a lot of testers' ears, because as you can imagine, David, a lot of the testers out there that just don't have the skills to write tests just with pure Selenium using EasyRepro. So I think the SpecFlow that you've shown, the library to support SpecFlow, I think the first question really that is one of the challenges that was mentioned earlier by Florian was around the libraries for Easy Repro. Have you had challenges when you have your end users setting up your SpecFlow libraries with the Easy Repro libraries? Were there any challenges that were faced?
Yeah, we have had some challenges, but rather than kind of going in a different direction, what we decided to do is contribute to it and try and improve Easy Repro. So you'll notice from a lot of my team members, like especially the person who created this Power App bindings, we've got a lot of PRs into Easy Repro. So we thought we'd stick with it and try and contribute and make it better and more reliable, I guess, for everyone. Don't know if that answers the question.
That's great. Now, there are some questions in the chat. So the first question, I think it's by, okay, so the first question is by Davey. In the JSON file that you use to create the record, you use some formatting to populate the field. Are you using field schema name or are they different names?
Yeah, it's the field schema name. So it's the schema name of the field that you're using in the JSON file. It's everything with, so if it works on the API for Dynamics 365, it'll work in the JSON file. So it's just a representation of what you'd be passing in the API in a post request to the Dynamics 365. It resembles the deep insert syntax as well.
So there was a question by Lakshman. That's hi, Robert. If possible, could you show us how you created a connection string in Dynamics CDSDB? That's by Lakshman.
So I presume that question is about logging in. But let me just move back over to the VM because maybe I brushed past this too quickly. But what we've done is we've made this. I like to think anyway. We've made this quite simple. Is you just put the while I load the YAML file. We've just put the URL here, which can also be an environment variable. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of variables, but also you've just got your username and password here. So it builds all the connection string in the background for you. You just need to worry about putting in your username, your password, and your URL.
Great, and I think that actually raises another topic, David. So there's one common scenario where ADFS login is required for CRM. Does this support ADFS logins as well?
I believe it does, but I'd have to get back to you. I'd have to check on that one because I'm not the original creator of the tool. I'm just a contributor and an enthusiast. So I'd have to check with my colleague on that. But if it isn't, I'll definitely raise that because I think that's a valuable thing to have.
Oh, definitely. I've seen it on several implementations whereby just getting past the login screen was a blocker for a lot of the testers. So that would be a huge value add. Okay, so moving on down the list of questions here, Davey's asking, I can see you have provided some scenarios. Have you covered all the possible scenarios, or the user has to implement some scenarios that are not available in the framework? If the user had to implement those scenarios that are not covered by the framework, does he need to write the step conditions as well?
So we've got, if it's on the Easy Repro, it's really this step condition. It's really easy to extend because what you can do is you can just create your step binding file and inherit from Easy Repro and use the XRM app definition. So it's really easy to extend. We do have a lot of steps and different steps on here. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you see my screen now, if we go on to a when, right? We've got a lot of different when methods for what the actions would be performed by a user. So we've got a lot of the functionality covered. And then we've also got, if we go into then, we've also got a lot of different assertions here. So there is a lot of core commands and what would be done is supported. If there is any that you have found missing that isn't useful, you could either raise a contribution yourself, or we are more than happy to receive these as feedback as issues on our GitHub repo, and we'll look to implement them because if it's missing a command, we probably want to add it in anyway.
Cheers, David. And the last question is, could you share your repo and demo project? If you've got a link you could share, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just get the repo. I'll put that in the chat window now. There you go. It should be in the chat window.
Fantastic, David. So, David, do you have any final last comments to round off this great session?
I guess just thank you everyone for attending and all that. I've really enjoyed presenting on this topic. So hopefully I'll be able to join in again in the future. I think that would be it.
That's great. So for those who just as a summary of this session, essentially what David showed you was how to use the spec flow framework on the link that he shared with the Easy Repro framework that is the open source framework provided by Microsoft for the regression test automation for Dynamics and Power Apps. So essentially, he showed you how to write those tests, get it set up, get the scaffolding set up, write those tests, and not only that, how to add them into your pipeline. So again, well done, David. Fantastic. Lots of fantastic comments in the chat there. Please feel free to share your contact details. I'm sure many of the community would like to connect with you. By the way, David, I couldn't find you on Twitter. I'm not sure if you are on Twitter or not, but I did find you on LinkedIn, so that's great. So again, thank you, David.
Thank you for having me, Raz.